It's Real Talk, Episode 3, Friendship Flicks. And I'm your host, and maybe friend too, Al the Movie Lion. On today's show, my friend Lila the Sugar Glider swoops on in to help me score Lost in Translation. Director and funny man Dan Stewart comes to the jungle to help me score Dumb and Dumber. And post-wrestling's own Neil Flanagan has dropped by just to help me score The Shawshank Redemption. Now quick, leave a like, subscribe, and then and only then will we start the show. Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget. It's been said that friendship isn't something you find, it's something that finds you. Sofia Coppola's 2003 film Lost in Translation is perhaps a perfect example of that, as Bill Murray's Bob and Scarlett Johansson's Charlotte are the most unlikely of friends, but find each other when it's a friend they need most. You could say that the movie is about loneliness, because the main characters always have the immediate option to find something to do on their own. But we see a short friendship blossom by choice, which makes it that much more meaningful. I think it's a safe bet that for the rest of time, when discussing the careers of both Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson, someone will raise the question, you've seen Lost in Translation, right? Lucky for me, one of my tiniest pals has seen Lost in Translation and agreed to review it with me. Please welcome to the Jungle Recording Studio, for the first time, Lila the Silver Screen Sugar Glider. Lila, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for swooping in.
Hey, Al, thank you so much for letting me swoop in. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Of course, today's episode, the theme is friendship flicks. I
Oh,
couldn't be
yes.
happier to have one of my best pals here to talk to me,
Oh, yes.
honestly, about one of my favorite movies. I'm curious, was this the first time you'd seen Lost in Translation? Had you seen it
So
before?
this was my second time watching it. I missed the boat in 2003 for being, I think, 11 years old.
Yeah.
This was definitely much more of I was like, all right, I'm in my mid 20s now. I think I'm ready to watch the movie that I've heard about for so long. I think experiencing this movie at different ages in your life can help set it apart from other things, from other kinds of medium. If I watched this when I was 11 years old, I could feel one way. Definitely felt a way in my 20s and definitely felt a way in my 30s.
I agree with you. I mean, all great art grows with you, and I feel like this is a movie, very soft R rating. So I don't think the 11-year-old you would have been too offended or seen anything. But I
I
do
think I
think,
just wouldn't have known
yeah,
what's the big deal.
it
Yeah,
would
yeah,
have
like
resonated as much.
why, yeah.
But I do think it is actually a really important movie because
Yeah.
it's a rare movie in that it's sort of a romantic comedy, but the romance is a platonic romance. It's very much just about two people who have found themselves in a situation. Lila, what was your thoughts on the plot?
When I watched it for the first time, there was a very rich sort of nostalgia that kind of set in when movies looked like this. There's a look to it, there's a lighting to it that is different from what we're regularly seeing now. Between my first watch and my second watch, I think I softened my thoughts to it. I didn't love it the first time, and then this past time I really liked it.
You mentioned, that upon a second viewing, it maybe resonated with you a little bit more. Why do you think that is? Was there something specific that stood out to you that was maybe a little more interesting about the story at this point in your life?
I've never been to Tokyo before. My wings don't go that far, unfortunately. I'm working on it. I'm hoping to actually fly out there next year. When I first watched it, like I think there was just a sort of impatient, you're in Tokyo. For both you as a rich, established person, and for you as like a young new person into all this, how could you not find enjoyment in this? And I think that was like my first onset thoughts of it. And then for the last time I watched it, like, recently, I can be a little bit more sympathetic or empathetic to feeling lonely in like odd places.
Right.
Oh, it is very possible for you to feel isolation and loneliness because you're in a place where you don't speak the language or because of what you're currently going through.
Two people, two unlikely souls connecting, and it is loneliness that connects them. And I
Hmm.
hear what you're saying, that when you're in a place as interesting as Japan, as interesting as Tokyo, you would imagine, well, how could you be lonely? You're surrounded by
Totally.
millions of people. There's so much to do. I can see why maybe a little bit of a wiser sugar glider might appreciate that more. As a lion who has spent a little bit of time in Japan and absolutely loved it. I really adored it there.
Yeah.
It is a city that you could find yourself sort of walking around any time of day. It's sort of like Las Vegas in that way, but it can feel very, very isolating, kind of overwhelming in a very defeating way because there's so much to
Yeah.
see and there's so much to do, and especially when you don't speak the language. That's what I think makes this movie really special is
Yeah.
that it's saying relationships can be temporary. They can be
Hmm.
unorthodox, even if they're not anything more than just some temporary fun. As
Yes.
is the case on the show, we do like to designate the plot 1 out of 10.
If I had to give it a score from the scale of 1 to 10, I give it a solid 7. There's a part of me that wants to give it an 8, but there are two things about it I realized I didn't like the first time and that I still didn't like the second
Do
time.
tell, please.
I could have done without the R's and L's jokes. I was fine with like one, two, especially like I'm not comfortable in this place and I'm trying to make light of how and it felt like it was constant. Now I'm trying to also bear in mind that this was 2003. It was a
Sure.
different time. It was funny. Alex, my husband, walked in and he was like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen this movie since college." I laughed so hard when she said lip my stockings.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, that's so funny. I like rolled my eyes. He's a half Asian sugar glider as well as I am.
Yes, yes.
And so it's funny like where certain things like touch a nerve. I felt like for the most part it was fine. I think there was just so many of them. I could have done
It brought it
without.
down for you a little bit, maybe. It
Yeah, it
sounds
brought
like
it down a little bit. And I think because I'm watching it through the lens of 2025.
the strength of any movie, especially comedy, is how well they
Yeah.
age. So the situation with Bill Murray's character is
Hmm.
he's having a difficult time communicating with the people on set. He does
Yes.
have a translator. The translator seems to be sort of ineffective, which
She's
in
like
and of
mincing the
itself,
words. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
which is which is a funny joke. But yeah, when it comes down to just sort of the general misunderstanding of
Hmm.
communication,
Yes.
it is a joke that they go to a few times. So I can see how if you weren't into it, it might be a little grating. But I should
Yes.
ask you because this is a movie that is all about its characters. Full disclosure, a lot of this movie I feel like gets very different reactions depending on the gender
Yes.
of the audience.
I think that it's not a campaign against Bill Murray slash Bob Harris. Sophia did a really great job in painting out how these two people could feel so lonely, like writing around both of Bob Harris's and Charlotte. Wow. Charlotte and Scarlett are so similar. I thought that I said the wrong name. Bob Harris's wife, like mostly through fax, a little bit on the phone, and then Charlotte's husband, played by Giovanni Ribisi, John. They're not necessarily villains. The Bob Harris's wife is. She's dealt with him being very absent and she's seen this movie before. And then on the other side of the same coin, where John, he's the absent one, he's just so focused on his career that he's not seeing how Charlotte's presence being there and her trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life, he can't be there for her in the way that she needs him to. And I also think that, again, two sides of the same coin, Bob Harris is, he can feel this kind of loneliness that long into a marriage where Charlotte, they just got married 2 years ago. It's not a campaign against Bob Harris. I think that he just is an incredibly lonely person at the studio. I thought that was fascinating where all eyes are on him, but no one is really speaking to him. No one is really, he is a
Well,
project.
but what's interesting about them is that is the key, you kind of touched on the key difference is that Scarlett's character is she sort of can't be seen. Her husband is there, her partner is with her, but
Yeah.
he's completely different. Bill Murray's character is sort of in the opposite situation where he's on the other side of the world from his wife, but she's faxing him at 4 a.m. She's calling.
Yes.
He's trying to get away and has somewhat successfully done it, but is bored. Whereas Scarlett's character is trying to get attention, and not,
Yes.
she is away with her significant other. So they are completely different situations in terms of
Yeah.
age, in terms of relationship. Again, Bob Harris, which is he was married for 25 years. He's just
So then there you go. Yeah.
very different points of life that they found themselves in. I, as much as I like a Giovanni Ribisi, I didn't feel like they had any chemistry. I it didn't buy that they would have ever been in love. They seem like very different people, and even
Yeah.
thought that maybe that was a little bit of a misstep. And I not
I
and
could see
he's a
that.
great actor, but they didn't seem like they'd even be friends, let alone
Yeah.
husband and wife. I would be remiss if I did not bring up Anna Faris. I thought she was
I mean, I
hysterical.
forgot she
There
was in it.
was
That was such a surprise.
again,
Oh my
we're both
gosh.
in the business. I'm a mascot for a production company. Unfortunately, you meet a lot of Kellys in the world.
She
Out,
nailed it. She
she
nailed it.
was funny, and I will say the chemistry between her and Giovanni Ribisi hysterical, so good. The way he
Amazing. I think maybe they were like leaning a little farther away from warmth. I agree with you, or
sure.
I don't know a world where they are actually happy together. Have they ever had a
Yeah,
fun dinner date before?
I want
I'm
to see those
looking
wedding photos. Yeah, what did that
for
look like?
sure. His chemistry with Anna Faris was magnetic. They're on fire. They're on fire together. There was a lack of warmth on John's side towards Charlotte. Not like a coldness, but just like a dismissive
Yeah,
like
very.
brain fogginess. It's this really wild parallel of these two different marriages where they meet in that middle with each other is obviously the meat of the story.
What they find is what is missing in their other
Yeah.
relationships. And I think that that's what
Yes.
the movie is exploring is this idea divide the lines and in what where passion and happiness and friendship, when is it and when isn't it appropriate. I'm curious, what would you give the characters and performances out of 10?
We're gonna start with Anna Faris because like
She
she
steals the
was
show. I mean,
like
yeah.
she stole a lot of the scenes. She just has that it factor, both beautiful and hysterical.
She gets the
So when
joke. She knows what she
yes,
can do and she does it perfectly.
yes, I completely bought that this is who she is. I don't know her personally, so I can't
Hey.
say I don't think she is, but I don't think that she is. I think that she's the queen of my heart. That's what I think.
So is that
For
a 10? Am
John,
I locking in a 10 overall or
I'm
are you
locking it. It's a 10. It's a 10 out of 10 for me.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of arguments with that. I mean, this is a movie that has a lot of great performances. Bill Murray was nominated for Best Actor for
Yes,
this role, so certainly, Lila,
I think
if I
so.
have to look into the crystal ball, I think a lot of people are going to be happy with that. You mentioned earlier the look of this film. Lance Accord, who's the DP of this, there's a style and a look in the late 90s and the early 2000s that I don't want to say he's responsible for, but he's very much
Yes.
he did a lot of Marie Antoinette, which is another Sofia Coppola picture. He did all of Spike Jonze pictures, so Adaptation, which we
Hmm.
talk about later in the season, being John Malkovich. But there's a very naturalistic, almost documentary style where everything is just lit very naturally, lit very understated. But he does find these really, really beautiful shots. There's this one moment, and I call attention to it because it's so easy to miss. Bill Murray's character is in a limousine and it's pulling up in front of the hotel, and the way the roof on the overhang reflects
Hmm.
over the windshield of the car sort of creates this diamond pattern. And when the car pulls up and stops, Bill Murray's in the back seat, but his head just sort of lands almost perfectly in one of the diamonds. And I'm watching it and I'm going, I can't imagine that they planned that. I can't imagine that was something on the scout that they went.
Totally.
But there's all these beautiful shots that you'll find, even if Bill Murray's just having a pensive moment in the pool. It's a very good looking film, but at no point does it feel like it's trying to be better looking than it is. I
Yeah.
digress. What were your thoughts on the visual storytelling?
I think there was a part in the beginning where I felt myself suck my teeth and be like, this is like such a missed opportunity to be a love letter to Tokyo. I needed to just like be quiet for a little bit longer because I didn't align that with story progression
Sure.
because these two people are so miserable. There is no love given to Tokyo in their hotel room where there's just the mundane wallpaper and the views from their from their rooms, while they're huge and like skyscrapery, you can't really see the details of the lifestyles of this country, of this
You're
culture.
literally above it at all
You're
times.
above it
You're just
all.
looking, yeah,
Totally.
yeah, you're just
I didn't
looking
even
down
think of that.
at it.
Yes. And then it isn't until they find their friendship, they find their flow, that they're moving into the city a little bit in a different way. Like was there like a laser gun? Like was it a BB gun? Was
It's
it like what was
a little
that? Like
machine gun thing they get
what
chased by.
was
Yeah,
it?
yeah. The
Uh,
montage where they're sort of running through, they run through a casino. They kind of so
yes.
yeah. I know the moment you're talking about. There's a character
You know
with
what I
a
mean?
little.
And I love that they got to have that sort of like adrenaline pumped moments through the city. And again, as time went on, the love letter became clearer and clearer
Yeah,
because this place is no longer a place of misery and I hate it here and
right.
I'm so alone here. So I do appreciate that I got tricked. I got played. I was like, wow, as this little sugar glider who's never gotten to go to
This
Tokyo,
little
I'm
small
like,
town sugar glider.
small town sugar glider just wants to see the lights, just wants to see the crossing. And you guys have this opportunity and you're squandering it. But then as time goes on, the places they go, the things that we see, a feeling of like what it could be like my first time in Tokyo kind of thing.
Yeah, their exploration of each other is mirrored by their exploration of Tokyo.
Yes.
I really did appreciate how this movie ends with a hug. This movie accomplishes with a hug 90% of the movies out there are trying to accomplish can't accomplish with a kiss.
Hmm.
They can't accomplish because it's the way that it comes together. Obviously, it has a lot to do with the screenplay, it has a lot to do with the plot, but the way that it's shot, they don't have that hug in a room by themselves. They don't have that
Hmm.
hug in the lobby with you. They have the hug outside in the middle,
Hmm.
again, in the daylight with hundreds of people surrounding them. And in that moment, it is just them. It is just an embrace. And it's just a goodbye. They're never going to see each other again. It's a recognition of this was a super temporary thing. But I don't know, just visually, as simple as that was articulated, when they're hugging and they go to the wide and they come back in, and there's this almost a little tear coming out of Scarlett Johansson's eye, it was such a beautiful visual portrait of what they had arrived at.
I had said earlier
Mm-hmm.
that there were two things that I didn't like about this film. And
Yes.
it was the R's and L's, and they kiss at the end.
Because to me the hug is the emotional embrace, the hug is the
And
goodbye,
that is the
and then
yes.
then the kiss is not a, I genuinely don't believe that it's so much of a romantic kiss. We're never going to see each other again. We're going to spend the rest of our lives thinking what could have been, so I'm just going to pull the band-aid off right now
Mm,
and show you that there is nothing there. I just interpret it as a, because there's two kisses, there isn't just one. There's a kiss on the lips and then there's a kiss on the side of the head. Kiss A as a sort of, see there's nothing here, and kiss B is a much more like almost a fatherly kiss on the forehead. For me the hug is the peak, but it sounds like the kiss maybe took things back for you a little bit.
the kiss did take things back for me. I'm not a prude. I'm not like whatever, but I felt like the hug was 100 out of 10. It was the right bow. So I again, and I took this all as like platonic. Even when they fell asleep in the bed, they're finally able to fall asleep. These two insomniacs
Right. Oh
are
yeah.
finally able to fall asleep because they feel like their body's literally at peace and they give that to each other. And I thought that was beautiful. So the hug, to bring that back, I thought it was beautiful. It was like, of course, it makes sense. Like you saved each other in that way. And then the kiss just was like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Let me ask you this, Al.
Sure. Yes.
As a lion, had they not had either kiss, forehead kiss, lip kiss, would that have changed the entire view of the film for you? Was that needed?
If you remove it, I don't think that the movie is worse, but I do think that the move elevates the conversation, and I think that that's consistent with what the movie is. But I think their relationship, there was always a little bit of an underlying sexual chemistry that wasn't found it. I think it's okay. I think it's okay for us to be attracted to people we wouldn't traditionally be attracted to. I think it's okay to acknowledge that without acting on it. I think that's part of
Hmm.
what being mature is. They had such a good time together. Had they not had the kiss, well, what if? By him ripping that cord, it was almost a gift in a way.
Yeah.
And again, as a male lion, I don't want to sound like I'm encouraging our listeners to just run around and smooch ladies and call it a gift. But what I'm trying to say is I feel like that revealed more of the context of their relationship, because
I
by
think
not
the
doing the kiss, there's a question mark. By doing the quick kiss, there is no question mark. And that's
I
that's
think
my
yeah.
response. Yeah.
That is a perspective that I didn't get. The point of that they'll never see each other again, and that this is almost like an open aired secret, like they're both married, like they really shouldn't be smooching in theory, but like they are having this goodbye very publicly. I can see in a world where this is just to quell all wonderings of could it have
Urges.
been.
We do have to move on, so I've got to get a grade for you on visual storytelling. 1 out of 10. What is Lila gonna drop on the visual storytelling?
Lila is going to give this an 8.
That's a great score. Well, now we're gonna move on to use of sound. This is a movie that has an immersive soundtrack. We talked about being in
Mm.
the casino earlier. There's a fun scene
Hmm.
where Bill Murray's sort of swimming, and the camera in one shot is finding itself going
Yes.
above and below the water, and the sound is
Yes.
it does a really good job of bringing you into these places and making the
Mhm.
environments feel very, very real and saturated.
I mean, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. That entire night of them out in the city, like the karaoke, down to the songs that they were choosing to
Oh yeah.
sing, all very intentional, all very, it's like it was so immersively like, don't need to go that far into it. Honestly, it was like a 9 out of 10 for me. Like, I thought it got me there.
The 9 is locked in. It's official. That brings us to theme. I feel like most of this conversation we've kind of been talking about theme. I mean,
I
that's
think
this
so.
movie. It is a character film, but the characters are doing nothing but sort of traversing this theme of friendship, the themes of loneliness, and isolation. Not only being isolated somewhere in the world you've maybe never been or that feels foreign to you, but being kind of isolated where you're at in your relationship. So I'm curious, Lila, to round things out, you've got to give the theme a score before we calculate everything. What would you give the score? What would you give the theme, rather? We don't score
What would I
scores here.
give?
Yeah. Not
I
yet, we
can't
don't.
score a score. I'm not, the theme of the navigation of loneliness, how you can feel that at any time in your life, like whether you're established, whether you're just getting started, I think is so fascinating. Oh man, like I feel like I'm
Let it come. Let it flow naturally, Lila.
the natural number I want to give is a 9. They've really explored feel the ability to feel lonely anywhere and how finding connection is what will get you out.
That means you've got all your scores locked in. So I'm gonna reveal the total here. You gave the plot a 7, the characters and performances a 10, the visual storytelling an 8, the use of sound a 9, and the themes a 9. That brings us to a total score of 86. A pretty solid
That's
score.
I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that.
Now, that would technically, depending on your alma mater, probably be a B. Here on Real Talk, things are a little different. I like to think anything over an 80 is an A because we're starting all the way down there at 0 out of 100. Is this an A movie for you? Is this a B movie? What would you.
Well, the numbers can't lie. I put all the numbers in there, but I think I would have actually given this a B plus.
Yeah.
We're really just dicing hairs at this point. An A, a B plus. Like I really liked the movie, and so I'm happy with an 86. I'm happy with an A.
Well, we got 86 locked in for an A. My scores were I gave the
Mm,
plot a 10 to your 7. I did feel like
mm,
the plot was actually the strongest point of this movie. I felt like it was really unpredictable. And even watching it, I mean, I've definitely seen this more than twice, but
mm,
there were moments I forgot. There were things that I kind of saw for the first time. I gave it a 10. Characters and performances, I gave a 9. To your
mm.
10. Anna Faris, I loved her. It wasn't enough for me to give it a 10, but I did feel like these characters are doing everything they needed to do. They themselves seem to be more representational of a life situation than specific characters, but I thought the performances were amazing. Visual storytelling, you and we tied. I gave it an 8.
Nice.
Use of sound, I gave it a 9, just like you,
Nice.
9. And themes, I gave it a 9 as well. So we were
Oh
pretty
my God.
completely
We
aligned.
just like kind of switched
We switched.
ish, like
I
those
gave
first two.
overall, I gave it a 90 to your 86. That's an A from me. Lila, this was fantastic. If you do end up going to Tokyo, please let me know.
I will let you know.
And if
I will send
anybody's
you a
been,
postcard. Yes.
yes, if anybody's been, please leave in the comments. Let us know where Lila should check out when she gets to Tokyo. Also, any of the listeners should check out redbubble.com, Platinum Plastic. They're one of our sponsors. They do our merch shop. And Lila, you can pick up your own Lila Glider t-shirt. I love it. I've got one. It may or may not be in the vein of Lila's favorite movie snack. Uh,
Ooh, can you guys guess it when you see it?
Let us know in the comments how many t-shirts you buy. Lila, thank you so much again for coming in. Will
Thank
you
you
come
for
back?
having me, Al.
Will you come back and
I will I will be back anytime you ask, my friend. Absolutely.
Well, until next time, thank you so much. Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A+ gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch. If you want a well-choreographed musical, you go Bubsy Berkeley. If it's a spaghetti western you're after, then you want some Sergio Leone. But if you're looking for outrageous comedies that are as funny as they are unpredictable, then it's the Farrelly Brothers you call. With a filmography that also includes pictures such as Kingpin, There's Something About Mary, and Shallow Hal, it's difficult to argue that the duo of brothers can't make anyone with a pulse laugh out loud. Even in throwaway transitional shots, the Farrelly brothers insert jokes like Jim Carrey's Lloyd, just discovering that we landed on the moon, because Dumb and Dumber always has time for an extra laugh. The film works so well because the audience is given an omnipotent point of view, which makes us the only smart ones in the room. Lloyd and Harry may be dumb, but hilariously, the film's villains are dumber because they assume our heroes are smarter than they are. Just when you think you've heard a punchline, here comes another one, reminding us that the characters may be unified in harmonious bewilderment, but the filmmakers know exactly what they're doing. This is a romantic buddy flick comedy if there ever was one. Although both men fall in love with a married woman, it's their love and support for each other that continuously saves them, and often without the boys even being aware of it. Maybe true ignorance is bliss, but Dumb and Dumber suggests that maybe it's more blissful to observe idiots than be one. My friend, director Dan Stewart, has joined me to score the film, so let's get his thoughts. Dan, welcome to the jungle, buddy.
Hey, it is good to be in the jungle.
When I had to choose a friend, somebody to review Dumb and Dumber with, it could sound like an insult if I said you were the first person that popped into my mind, but it's not. I mean that because you're a really sharp, funny guy. You have great comedic sensibilities. You're a director. So I was like, oh, this Dan is perfect. Perfect guy.
Dumb and Dumber was definitely one of those in the 90s, growing up as a 90s kid. Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, Ace Ventura. That was the trifecta, the holy trinity of Jim Carrey. So much of me growing up was resonating with Jim Carrey's ability to make people laugh. And also, I would say, like, Austin Powers and like that dumb goof stuff where it's just like they are punching you in the face with humor and jokes so fast and frequently in Dumb and Dumber. I was so surprised watching it again, not just on like TBS in the background or like whenever it comes on, I'm just turning it on. And
oh, absolutely. It's like a great album.
It really is. The opening credits, I just noticed for the first time, there's a bunch of misspellings. They're visually telling those jokes. They're narratively weaving in visual and audible jokes nonstop for the whole thing.
And one of the, maybe the only things that Dumb and Dumber has in common with the film Precious, based on the novel Push by Sapphire, both contain misspelled words purposefully in the title sequence. We'll play a little game called How Many Things Does Dumb and Dumber Have in Common with Precious? It might be the worst drinking game in the history of podcasts. Dan, those are really great points. I feel like even amongst a very silly bouquet of performances that Jim Carrey has in the 90s, this is a really specific kind of and unique brand of silly. It's also somehow unique to Dumb and Dumber.
Man, just it's the obscenity of his visual performances, full body performances of The Mask and Ace Ventura. He just goes on somehow within, it's almost like within the same spectrum, but it is also the opposite side of the spectrum. I guess just playing like a total idiot. And he's also like, Jim Carrey's also an asshole in this movie to Harry.
Yeah, he's not the good friend.
He's not. I watched that, I feel like, with an eagle eye this time around, just like, man, he really is just a douche. It's really unfortunate what Harry has to kind of put up with. Maybe it's more of a drama.
All great stories, they say, can play out as a comedy or a drama, and that's a great example. This is very much a comedy, but you change a few, you turn the knob a little, and this could play out as a drama. We stick to plot first. We talk about plot. You've already kind of talked a little bit about how funny this movie is and how many jokes there are. And I think a great comedy, a great feature film is in and of itself a joke. And this movie does kind of play out with a setup and a punchline. When we talk about the plot of Dumb and Dumber, Dan,
watching it recently, I kind of felt like there was a moment where it was like, okay, this is probably where you could have shrunk down a little bit of that screen time and gotten this from an hour 52 minutes to like an hour 30. I think this would have been a really strong 90-minute. So much of that journey is like literally them chasing the girl. It's such a wild ride, the exploration and dynamic of their friendship. So I think it really does a good job at portraying Lloyd as a bad friend and Harry as like kind of the misfortunate friend who just like blindly, bestows his trust in this guy. They really are like Dumb and Dumber. Like I think they they nailed the title of the movie.
So you rate a 10 out of 10 for the title. Well, if you had the final edit, what are you axing?
I kind of feel like if you're watching Jaws, it all just climaxes and then it just drops off, right? Mm-hmm. I think they probably could have done that just a little more. I mean, they really kind of do that, with the shootout at the end and then it just wraps up. But I think all of that time in Lodge could be just a little quicker, maybe with like the deception of like the friend, Harry telling him like 10 a.m. at the bar, 10 p.m. You see like all of the montage of them having fun and stuff. I think at that point we've written so many of those jokes that you can probably condense it down just a little faster. But at the same time, like it would be a crime almost to cut any of these like wild scenes out of the movie. Like the fantasy when Lloyd is driving and Harry's sleeping, like that is a long cutaway like dream sequence that has to stay. I think the Farrelly brothers had just enough time to cook and like really have fun.
It is probably an easier question to ask you before you watch the movie than after. There's such a surplus of jokes and it's hard to think of, well, what do you cut, what do you don't cut? But I think that if you go the date that you mentioned that they go on and the sort of accident, or no, it's not an accidental date, but they're not exactly out in the open about it. And the funniest part of that scene to me is the snowball fight. I almost feel like you could cut his tongue getting stuck on the, because as funny as that is visually, as memorable as that is, there's so much extra in all these scenes that will technically, and I said it in my open, I mean, one of the biggest laughs for me is when he's walking out of the bar and he looks in at the headline from 1969 that says we've landed on the moon and he celebrates it. And that is a completely unnecessary joke. I think it's an interesting criticism that maybe it could be tightened up and I wouldn't want to be the one to have to trim things. How would you grade the plot? Does it do enough for you? Does it work?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it really is getting these two fools from zero to heroes and then immediately back down to zero. I don't know. Like, I would probably go like an 8. It's worth how well it did at the box office.
Yeah, this movie did exceedingly well. It has an estimated budget of 17 million, I think. And it had a worldwide gross of $247 million. And I'm sure that includes maybe a re-release or two over the years. But in the US alone, I mean, the movie's made $127 million off a $17 million budget. So you can't do much better than a $110 million profit. The next category is characters and performances. Jeff Daniels, he's great in this, and as many comedic performances that we can point to in Jim Carrey's career, not as many in Jeff Daniels' career, so almost, in my opinion, a little more impressive. What were your thoughts on the cast in general, but maybe we'll start with Harry, or Jeff Daniels' Harry?
he plays a little bit more of like the straight man. It makes sense, I think, when like Mary has a love interest in him because he's kind of just like he's just a simple man when you boil Harry down to it. And then Lloyd is like dude's insane, and then Harry is just like kind of lovable. Like I guess you have to feel a little bit of sympathy for him throughout the whole movie to really appreciate his character. They mess up his hair. Like his hair doesn't look good the whole movie.
No, there's no.
Like at least Jim Carrey's like coconut cut is almost forgiving, but like Harry looks like, well, I guess he's dressed as the dog and he's not groomed himself. Like maybe that's just another
Maybe he's
another level.
I can't remember who drew the comparison. Maybe it was Matt Groening himself. But he once said one of the reasons we love Homer Simpson is because Marge loves Homer Simpson. It's easier to love Lloyd because there's somebody there who is more lovable, who loves them. And I think that, yeah, I think Harry is like really, he's a sweetheart. Like he's the most conflicted, understanding that there's a woman interested in him who his friend is interested in. He's almost a victim of the circumstance, and he
Right.
does feel guilty when he takes time to enjoy it. There's almost two shades of dumb here, and one is pure kind dumb, and the other one is a little bit more calculated. I mean, Lloyd has a plan, has an agenda. He's trying to execute something.
To get back to just Jeff Daniels' performance as Harry, I obviously don't want to just boil this down to like poop and fart jokes, but his scene in the bathroom, that whole ordeal, I think if you're watching this movie for the first time and you see Jeff Daniels and you're like, oh yeah, he's funny and stuff, and then it gets to that, you arrive at that point in the movie, he's on the toilet, he's just it's like
Right. It's this.
I mean, it's the worst. It's
like,
the worst
yeah.
of the worst that you can kind of portray on screen. Like, well, I'm going to be known as like the guy that blew up a toilet in this movie. That's one of those frames, like him hugging the toilet. That might be one of the most famous, memes or pictures from the movie outside of them wearing like those suits.
Chaplin-esque in its sort of visual.
Oh my God.
Because it's a physical comedic performance, and it is parroting or satirizing a horrifying experience that people have. He has to visually represent that in the most comedic way possible for it to pay off. Otherwise, we're just suffering with who is effectively the most lovable character in the movie. Mike Starr has a really funny performance. He plays this sort of mob hand who decapitates a bird.
I mean, he really like is a first act middleman. He's literally in the middle of trying to understand if these guys are smart, or he thinks that they're smart, and then he finds out just before he dies that they're dumb. To have to play it straight in between Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, like in the car specifically, to sit there and to not like laugh, but to actually be tormented, like to play torment, for him to do that, and play against them, I think is probably like some kind of award that he deserves. I don't know what that is, but it's an accolade.
Dan Stewart Straight Man Award. And he's that constant barometer of like normalness to remind you of how absurd things are, because he's so upset by everything else. Well, then let me ask you, 1 out of 10.
I think I would have liked a little bit of a better, bigger bad. So I'm going to go 9. Jim Carrey's a 10. Jeff Daniels is a 10. I would give Mike Starr a 10 for like his role. Lauren Holly, I think she was a 10 too. Like she played ball. She was great.
She has a very sort of femme fatale look, but she's tasked with being a love interest.
Yeah, so a 9.
A 9. Locked in a 9.
Can I go 9.5? Can I go?
You can. The next category is visual storytelling. A lot of the humor is supported by the edit and the framing of the shots and everything. So yeah, your visual storytelling.
It's 10.
A 10. Wow.
I think it's a 10. I think this thing, it's like every shot really does the whole character or the plot justice. That intro is so great for like 5 minutes. It's that funky song, and it's just like boom, body, boom, like that funky kind of like.
Oh yeah,
we're getting into some territory that kind of feels like it might be a little uncharted. I think just all of those visuals, worms in the living room, the couch. I mean, it's like they say something like, I don't think they're gonna if we can send them a message, let's mess up their place. I'm like, I don't think they're going to get that message. Like they're living in filth, literal like a vertical column of worms. It's so strong. God, and I think the editing really is great. You know, the end of that dream sequence.
Oh, the dream sequences in this movie are so funny. There's a
Yeah,
few, and they're so funny.
And this guy, so cinematographer, I haven't.
So he's had a really
Fly and Scream.
Mark Irwin, who's the cinematographer, Videodrome is probably his earliest work that people would be familiar with, but like you said, The Fly, Scream, amongst some other things. What you do on set has to be compounded in the edit or it's all for nothing. And the same exact thing can be said for comedy. And for a movie to have so many jokes and so many jokes that work in the edit is the perfect handshake between the cinematographer and the editor. But so many frames are just funny. If you watch this movie on mute, I think you laugh. I think there are plenty of times, like you said, with
Yeah,
on the toilet, where you can pull frames from this stills and you could show it to somebody who's never seen the movie and they'd laugh.
Yeah, I think just thinking like memorable frames. There's a wide shot when Lloyd and Harry are splitting up. I love that wide shot. It's one of the few like big landscape shots.
Yeah, but it
You know,
feels
they're nowhere near the mountains. And then you have the claustrophobic in the bathroom, Kim hugging the toilet. I mean, it's like there's such a grand spectrum, I think. Yeah, everything incorporated into the frame. God, their whole like drive and stuff. It's just
the tuxedos.
The tuxedos. Yeah.
When you think of iconic comedic costumes, you can think of maybe the Anchorman look, Tootsie or Dustin Hoffman or something, or the Dude, you know, and the Big Lebowski is another kind of iconic look. These two guys in the powder blue and pink tux. I mean,
let's say that's at the top, right? Like that's top wardrobe in this whole thing. But what Harry's wearing, you know, to this when he's going on the ski date, Lloyd calls him out. It's like so flashy and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, you know, it's not that revealing. You got nothing to show." And he puts on little shorts.
Yeah,
they're just like these little like track shorts right over, and it's like the attention to detail there, I think, is great. When Lloyd is trying to go to the date at the bar, he's got those gloves with the
it's friends like cowboy.
Yes,
yeah.
Full cowboy, like Colorado cowboy. Like he's got that nailed.
Thank you for wearing that outfit today, by the way.
Yeah, well, I love it so much. I love gloves, and I love gloves that just have some flair and some style.
Amazing. Well, I don't have to wrap up this particular category by asking you what the score will be. So I will do this instead. I will let you know and all the listeners know that we have a sponsor called Platinum Plastic. They handle all of our merchandise. If you go to Redbubble, search Platinum Plastic, make sure you say it and spell it the right way. One of the things we have is a Mutts Cuts design. So you can get a Mutts Cuts t-shirt, a hat, a sticker, a pin.
What?
Yeah, available on, I think, over 30 different items you can get it on right now in the Real Talk shop. Before you go and buy a bunch of Mutts Cuts merch from Real Shop, from the Real Digital merch shop, let's talk about the use of sound.
Oh, it works so well. Man, there's such little things. I mean, it complements the visual narrative so well. It sets such a bar, especially for, like their first movie. They open up with that funky thing, and the car is like almost bouncing to the music, you know, as well. And these guys are just, God, they're such goobers. And you know what? Maybe as iconic as I think that opening song is, the other one that sticks out to me, and it's probably just the way that they're used. The opening, the dream sequence, and then I think the first time Lloyd meets Mary, it's just like Ken from Toy Story 3 when he meets Barbie. The Dreamweaver. It's such a fun trope to play in a movie. Every single track, I think, was correct.
There's just a little sound bite used at the end of the movie that sounds a little something like kind of a throwaway clip in there at the very end. But yeah,
it's not a throwaway. I almost wish that's how they ended the movie. If they would have actually done that edit, because that's basically like the Scooby-Doo ending. God, when it's just like, oh my God, what is he doing? And he starts shooting like, it's so great. That's a final button.
There's a relentlessness to the comedy in this movie.
Yeah,
And that's what the ending sort of do. It's just once when you think it's over, it keeps going and then it keeps going and it keeps going. Yeah, well, it sounds like you'd give it a pretty high score, but if you had to designate it a number, 1 out of 10, what would you give the use of sound?
I am, I, but I'm gonna say like I'm gonna give it a 10 as well. Cinematography and music, I think it's just hand in hand. Like they're both deserving of each other, much like Lloyd and Harry are.
Such a profound connection. I love it.
Yeah.
In profound connections is certainly something we can discuss here in our final category of theme. You know, this is a movie, let's face it, it's called Dumb and Dumber. It's not setting out to be the most intelligent film. It is made at the highest technical level. It's performed and directed at the highest technical level. But when we're talking about the themes in this movie, it's not going to be the same conversation we're having if we're talking about Lost in Translation, which we get into later in this episode, Shawshank Redemption, a lot of heavier themes in those movies.
I think theme and plot are the sound and visuals are hand in hand. I think theme and plot, I would have to kind of go about it in the same way. They're not like trying to break you out of any kind of like standardized theme or anything crazy. They're not trying to challenge theme.
This is an Interstellar.
I think at the end of the day, this is probably like it still does its job well. So I'd probably say like a 6 or 7. Maybe it's a little more basic. A story like this isn't calling for anything more. I'd say pretty standardized. I'd go like I'll go like 7. I'll go 7.
7. All right. I locked in a 7 for you. You could go 6.5, but we're going to go 7. You gave the plot an 8. You gave the characters and performances a 9.5. You gave the visual storytelling a 10, the use of sound a 10, and the theme a 7. That gives you a grand total of 89.
I would love to give Dumb and Dumber. I think it's a really strong B plus, and so 89, like depending on your academia, I would keep it there because I think there are there's movies that are way more deserving of an A. I don't think this is as bad as a C.
I would agree with that. The next picture is Kingpin. I think that's a better movie, and then I don't. I personally think of the first three, Kingpin is probably the strongest picture. But I think I probably maybe even enjoy Something About Mary more than this. That's not saying much because I really like all three pictures.
There's Something About Mary is more wholesome, I think, to a degree, and it's probably because of Ben Stiller, like a little more of a canon. I would give There's Something About Mary probably a 90, maybe a 91.
Okay.
I mean, it's just right above it.
I gave the plot a 9 to your 8. I gave the characters and performances a 9 to your 9.5. I gave the visual storytelling a 10 to your 10. I actually gave the use of sound an 8 to your 10. Again, I felt like it was technically proficient. You may have twisted my arm a little bit because I don't know. I think I didn't realize how much I appreciated the music until you sort of talked about it. But I did give it an 8, and then the themes I actually gave a 9. I agree that it's not really trying to navigate anything too deep, but even the analogy, the grass is always greener on the other side. There's only one theme there. It's pretty simple, but sometimes it's a really effective analogy. So I looked at this movie as really being aware of its themes and navigating them well, but I do agree that it's not the most profound exploration of them. That gave me a total of 90 to your 89. So not really that much different. I think as comedies go, I would pretty comfortably call this, an A minus to a B plus. So I think that averages out to an A. Your B minus to my A minus, or your B plus to my A minus. I think
for 100%. Yes, that's what I would. Yep. And this is a heavy hitter. This is a heavy hitter for comedies.
Absolutely.
So Airplane, speed of jokes versus speed of jokes and Dumb and Dumber. Airplane's faster still. They are actually keeping pace with each other, I think, fairly well.
That's a great connection and comparison because but they are very different structurally. One being a slapstick comedy that allows you to kind of machine gun your audience with a whole variety of jokes and not have to explain it. Where this is a real evolution of that because this is slapstick, but it's like the Batman Begins of slapstick. It's like the most realistic, grounded version of slapstick where everything is explained. You can't just have a character be stupid because it's funny. In this movie, if a character is stupid, they are stupid, and other people will treat them as such. So I really love that comparison because I think it's fair.
I love that analogy. Batman Begins and Casino Royale are
Yeah.
perfect like equilibrium things. Describing it as that evolution of like a slapstick. Jim Carrey's a performer. It's like Jim's on a leash, and then you just
Oh yeah,
let go. You just let go, you know. And it's like, Jim, command the room, like just make everyone laugh. And
it's incredible. Yeah, Jim Carrey is a one of a kind talent. I mean, the energy he brings. I can't think of anybody. Maybe Robin Williams is the only other performer I can think of that kind of has that same comedic intensity that just seems like it's unbridled, and it's lightning in a bottle. I might say you're kind of like lightning in a bottle yourself. Having you here, I feel very lucky. I feel like a very lucky lion. And I'm curious, would you maybe come back someday and review another film, maybe another Fairley Brothers picture?
I would love to. I would 100% love to just like shoot the shit on any of this kind of stuff. I love it.
Can I put you on the spot and ask you what's on this date? What's Dan's favorite movie? Does director Dan Stewart have a favorite movie he's comfortable revealing to the public here in the jungle, to the Real Talk listeners?
Man, I guess if you boil me down to my bones, I'm just a basic Spielberg junkie. Jurassic Park, I can watch. I'll turn it on to like go to sleep because it's a lullaby to me. And it's like, if it's on a TV, I'm watching the whole thing out of respect.
If and when, and it's pretty much, as you know, Owl the Lion is a pretty big fan of Jurassic Park. So I think it's a matter of when we will review Jurassic Park. I'd love to have you back to talk about that film because I can't think of a better. Unless I had Sam Neill on the line, I can't think of a better person.
Hey, I would be down to talk anything. I mean, man, I got goosebumps when you said Batman Begins because I do have such respect for that movie.
I love it, Dan. I'm so glad you could do this. I'm so glad you're willing to come back. Thank you, my friend. Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you please give us a follow if you're enjoying the show, as well as comment what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll. This review is brought to you by Post Wrestling, your trusted destination for pro wrestling podcasts, breaking news, and honest reviews on everything WWE, AEW, and beyond. Want to stay in the loop? Just search Post Wrestling on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Simplicity might be the most difficult note a storyteller can consistently hit when articulating a tale that contains layered characters, strong themes, and a story that doesn't stop unfolding until it's over. Like Orson Welles before him, writer-director Frank Darabont's first feature film is an iconic work that demonstrates his proficiency in the language of cinema. The Shawshank Redemption is an unforgettable film that has long been this lion's rebuttal to the thought that the book is always better than the movie. Every performance in the film is grounded in humanity, which allows Shawshank's foremost theme of institutionalization to shine, and at times tragically so. Human will is often the subject of movies regardless of genre, but Shawshank's cocktail of locations, themes, and period setting are all decisions that create a magnifying glass which focuses on integrity and will like no film I've ever seen. It's clear I'm a fan of The Shawshank Redemption, but I'm not sure how my friend and co-host of Post Wrestling's The Wellness Policy, Neil Flanagan, feels about the picture. Neil, is that a small bird in your pocket, or are you just excited to chat antiquated justice systems?
Al, I'm always excited to talk to Al the Movie Lion, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I think your intro doesn't quite say it all, but it says a lot. This is a classic film, and it's spoiler alert, I'm going to be very glowing in pretty much everything I say about it.
I would be surprised if anybody came here into the jungle and started talking smack about Shawshank. It's a pretty strong picture. You flew all the way over from Ireland, which is, I mean, again, definitely the biggest trek anyone's taken yet. So we appreciate that. We'll make sure your per diem is well in check. The Shawshank Redemption is based on a Stephen King story. Just as we sort of contain it and watch it as a movie, what were some of your thoughts on the plot, Neil?
I wonder whether a movie like this from 1994 would be makeable in the format it's in 2025, because this film's something of a slow burn. You know, it's much less about a single event. Right. And much more about the passage of time and the development of this profound friendship at the core of the movie. It's a very patient narrative in a time when films feel like they need to be kind of, right, we're moving from this plot point to the next one to the next. And I don't just mean, the Marvel Universe movies and so on. I think it goes for even the most critically acclaimed films, the sort of Academy Award worthy
Sure.
films. Just these days do have faster pacing than this film. So that's something I would say about how the plot is driven, but it's done really remarkably well. I think the genius is in the slow burn.
It's a plot that does unfold very slowly, but it always contains something unique to that moment you're in. When you watch the first act, there's maybe a character or two that are only contained there. When you get to the third act, there's a character or two that only contain it. When you get to the back half of the second act. So even though the movie is slowly unfolding, you're always getting introduced to new things. Things are always concluding and wrapping up and moving. There's not a moment really that drags. You actually kind of forget while you're watching this movie, my God, this takes place over 20, 25, 30 years. I mean, this is an exceedingly long period of time that this film covers, and it just breezes through it.
Some of the details that seem small, in the beginning, like Andy's accounting skills, the rock hammer. There's all sorts of things that become important as you go along. The way that Andy walks around the prison yard and why he's doing that, the way that unfolds is incredibly satisfying as a viewer.
The character of Brooks, he's this sort of older character that is introduced at the beginning of the movie. Very, very, again, you just wouldn't think anything of him. By the time you get to the end of the movie, by the time you get to the end of the second act, one of the most important characters in the movie. He's this embodiment of the theme of institutionalization and allows the other characters to talk about it.
On the slow burn of this plot, I think it makes the final acts, reveal of the escape and everything that follows after it. One of the most satisfying payoffs in cinema, which all leads to me giving this a very clear 10 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it is, like you said, it's a slow burn, but that wick does eventually get to a rocket that takes off, and it happens so late in the movie that you almost can't even imagine. Like your mind almost gets institutionalized within the walls of Shawshank. You can't think of a world outside of it. And when you get to that very last, 90 seconds of the movie, it's just such a beautiful moment. I got a 10 locked in for the plot. Characters and performances, Andy and Red, when it comes to buddies, I don't know that pretty high up there in cinematic duos when it comes to friendships.
Tremendous. I mean, Tim Robbins, and I haven't seen that many movies. When you mention his name to me, I think of this film and not that many others. But he's wonderful in this because he embodies the resilience of Andy's character so well. His performance is really kind of understated, but in a way that's captivating, portraying this man who absolutely refuses to let the institution break his spirit. He knows he's innocent of the crime that he's been wrongfully convicted for. He knows he's got 2 life sentences. He's probably never going to get parole. And yet he's got a plan. And he's got his dignity. And he's got this sense of self. And he's got his intellect, which is really his real weapon. In all of this, the performance of Tim Robbins in this is just incredible, I think. You can't really talk about that without talking about Morgan Freeman, who's the soul of the film, and largely also because of the voiceover sort of narration part of it as well. But a very well-earned Oscar nomination. And just as a side point, I think this film got 7 nominations, didn't win a single one. It's criminal. I haven't gone back to see who did win, but all the same, very Oscar worthy.
If I'm not mistaken, I will fact check this, or I'll leave it to the comment section for some good old fashioned engagement to tell me if I'm wrong. I believe this was the year that Forrest Gump ran away with everything. Yeah, I noticed that in looking this up too. Didn't pick up 1 win, which is kind of crazy to think about. And you can think of other legendary voiceover performances. I think of Henry Hill in Goodfellas. Obviously, that's Ray Liotta playing Henry Hill. You don't see this sort of boom after that movie of Ray Liotta doing a bunch of VO work, where Morgan Freeman
Mm.
does Shawshank. The guy is, when you look up voiceover in the dictionary, there's a picture of, of Morgan Freeman next to it, largely because of this movie. And again, I don't want to compare the two performances because this is in no way a knock on Ray Liotta, who created an iconic character. But there's just a sensibility and a wisdom that is articulated in the voiceover that a narrator has to bring, but
Yeah.
he's still at all times playing this character and this person's friend. It's really nuanced and subtle just from a voiceover perspective. And let alone when you actually get on screen and next to De Niro, he might play one of the most famous Irishmen in the
Yeah.
cinema history does read. I mentioned Brooks earlier, who I think is an incredible character, is the first one who's released from prison, and it doesn't take, I'll put it that way. And
Yeah.
I don't know, just an interesting turn. I mean, you can only see this movie for the first time once, but I remember distinctly getting to that point, and I was pretty young when I saw this, but didn't really see that side of it coming, and this idea of getting out and how that's kind of a real curse. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is what this movie does so well is it's not about an act, it's about the consequences of the act. And you could say
Yes.
it again, Tim Robbins, Andy Dufresne, killing his wife or not killing his wife doesn't matter. He's got 2 life sentences. Brooks being in prison, it's about what happens when he gets out of prison. That's what the echoes of the institutionalization are. Brooks being the sort of analog to Andy is, I think, a really great sort of balance of what a good main character and supporting character should be.
As a plot device, illustrates what Red's fate could have been, because he begins the movie as also a deeply institutionalized figure, and it's Andy that kind of changes things around for him. I would also, of course, when we get into the supporting cast, the Warden Norton,
Oh
Bob
yeah.
Gunton's performance, I think, is brilliant. I mean, he's not a one-note villain. There are complexities to this deeply awful man, the ultimate hypocrite. Hiding his
Oh yeah.
incredibly deep corruption behind this facade of the pious religious
Oh yeah.
man, fond of his scripture and all the rest of it. I don't know who you would want to recast in any of these roles. As you mentioned, funny, just as another side note, the Forrest Gump does line up. The comment section will make a correction if there's one to be made. But one of my little pieces of homework for this was discovering that Tom Hanks had been offered Tim Robbins's role apparently, but was committed to Forrest Gump, and that's why he did not take the role. So interesting to imagine this movie with Tom Hanks.
Now I'm trying to think of Tim Robbins as Forrest Gump too, just the ultimate tag. They swap. I think that might have been a harder lift for Tim than maybe for Tom. But no, that's a really interesting bit of trivia there. I had not heard that. Clancy Brown, who plays Captain Hadley.
Yep.
Gil Bellows plays Tommy, who's sort of Andy's protege. I've got to get a grade out of you for characters and performances, or else I'm going to talk all day about it. So,
Sure, yeah. Well, I can make that short and sweet. That's another 10 for me.
this is
this is one of my favorite films, and I know that's a trope at this point. In a lot of sort of famous people's what's your favorite movie, or user scores on some of the aggregation sites. Shawshank is always at the top or near the top, but for me, that's as it should be.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That brings us to visual storytelling.
Okay, well, I defer, Al, to your expertise in this matter more than my own, but what we've got is this muted, cold, almost monochrome, well, not quite monochrome, but very kind of muted
Right.
color palette most of the time for the prison interiors. And that makes these moments of hope. And I'm thinking of, for instance, the rooftop beer scene when
Yes.
Andy manages to finagle the beer for his co-workers on the roof. There's this just glorious, warm, golden sort of sunlight
Oh yeah.
Bathing that scene, and it just shows, you know, this incredible difference. So that in the moments of hope, you do get, so the lighting and the color really stood out to me in those moments. There's the dramatic moment of Andy's escape when he stands in the rain. Of course, it's emblematic of the entire film. That still of him with his arms outstretched. And I think also the other thing I would mention is the film's ending, the final scene in Mexico, which almost feels deliberately oversaturated and overlit. Just sort of representing this happy ending, this paradise, almost, that freedom that these friends have found.
So often we talk about foreshadowing in storytelling, and foreshadowing is something that can obviously happen in any department. So when we talk about cinematography, that scene on the roof, which I'll come back to in a second, because that's my favorite scene in the whole movie. I think it's this really incredible analogy for actually kind of our current climate in the world and our current climate with communication, not weather. I should point out, I wish every day was as beautiful as that day looked, but I bring it up with regards to foreshadowing because I do think that moment, everything that happens in that scene, from Andy getting the gumption to go talk to the guard, the way it works out, the fact that the guys have their beer and they relate. I think that all is that is the foreshadowing of the last shot of the movie. I think that those two shots, and when you talk about the feeling and the warmth and the sunshine, I think that is so deliberate because it really is the only time you are outside in the prison yard, but you're never elevated. You're on the ground. You're trying to, when you're on the roof there is this elevation, there's this warmth, and that is echoed in the last shot of the movie, which is this a helicopter shot, I would imagine, just because it's so high and the way they're pulling out. But that freedom, again, is echoed of being elevated, being above the ground. And it just really doesn't stop pulling out because it needs to be the widest shot of the movie. It needs to just show the openness around these two. And even just this little boat on the beach, I think it's a beautiful analogy. But when it comes to analogies and it comes to visual storytelling and good cinematography, the name that gets brought up a lot on this show is Roger Deakins. I think a lot of people forget that Shawshank Redemption is in his catalog. It's easy to think of Coen Brothers movies, Denis Villeneuve pictures, Shawshank Redemption, 94. He was holding it down. And that scene on the roof, the idea that an innocent man who can help somebody who is paid to keep him in line, and then that individual, the representation of the law, is literally complaining about having to pay tax. And the idea that the prisoner is trying to help the person that he does not need to help, it is just such an amazing, again, analogy for integrity. And what I think happens to a lot of people as adults, when you try to operate with integrity, even when you're trying to help people, a lot of people don't have the emotional intelligence to handle that. And that what Andy is the biggest victim of in this movie are the relationships with the other characters. And that's life. And that's something I think we can all take with us. But I'll digress. What do you give the visual storytelling? 1 out of 10.
I'll give it that 9. Not a perfect 10, I know, but I suppose I'm taking a little off just for the deliberate sort of steadiness of it all, which I know is actually part of the storytelling, but I don't need to justify myself. 9 out of 10 is pretty solid.
You got a 9 locked in. I think I happen to know Roger Deakins is a huge fan of the show, so I'm sure he'll be very happy with it. So you can let Neil know in the comments if you deserve a 10. That brings us to the use of sound. I assume maybe a similar response to what you were just saying about the cinematography. This does have a score. I mean, I've seen the movie so many times, it's hard for me to not say that the score is memorable just because I can think of it. But it is a very quiet movie. Obviously, there is a scene that's completely built around the importance of music and how Andy uses it. I'm curious, Neil, the use of sound. What were your thoughts on this?
It's pretty subtle. You know, the score certainly, you know, it's piano driven, captures sort of this melancholy tone. And yet, you know, some sort of background enduring hope, I guess, without ever feeling like too sentimental, which is what you would want to avoid. It swells at exactly the right moments. But as you said, it's not something I think I would be able to point to as something super memorable about the movie. The oppressive sounds of the prison, the slamming of the cell doors, the echoes of the shouting, the blares of the sort of yard bell, they help very much to center you in this constant sense of confinement and, you know, authoritarianism. So there's that. But you mentioned it, and it's the Mozart scene, you know, where Andy locks himself in and plays Mozart. I think probably the most powerful use of sound in the movie. For 2 minutes, this music transcends the prison walls, and as Red, and I took a note of this, narrates, I have no idea to this day what those two Italian ladies were singing about. I like to think they were singing about something so beautiful it can't be expressed in words. That's, I think, what most people think about when they think about sound and the Shawshank Redemption. So yeah, I've gone with an 8 out of 10.
Okay. I think that's very, very fair. I agree with you. I think that when you're on the roof or you're at the beach, it really stands out. It feels so much different. Similarly with the Mozart track, where it's really the only music, save for at the very beginning of the movie, there's this sort of, you know, just old radio kind of playing.
Yeah.
Very different than Mozart. But yeah, when you finally hear that music, it really, I don't know that I've ever appreciated a Mozart track so much, at least not in a film. That brings us to theme. It's the last category. Obviously, we talked about institutionalization. The theme of this show is friendship. You could argue that integrity and that being a theme, but I'm curious, Neil, what were your thoughts on some of the themes in this?
I think hope is a very big theme throughout this film. It's a very powerful argument that hope is a necessity to survive, sometimes in the worst circumstances. Andy tells Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. You know, there's just some wonderful dialogue in this movie as well. Yeah. And I think that's one of the core messages of the entire film. Friendship, of course, being the overarching theme of this episode, is also the bond between Andy and film is the bond between Andy and Red is the film's emotional anchor. I'm going to go on. Perseverance. Andy has a 19-year plan, you know. So this testament to patience and determination is something else. And of course, institutionalization, as you mentioned, is to this day, I mean, this is a period film, but to this day, it can strip people of their identity, their ability to function properly when they are released. I think Red's journey is really overcoming this from, you know, when he meets Andy. Redemption can be found, you know, I mean, thinking of the film's title, not in a parole board's decision, but in finding peace and freedom and friendship and all the good things. If that's not too mushy.
No, look, I think it's a really great summary. I mean, that's what I really appreciate, that often in life, the best friendships are a result of circumstance, and oftentimes not great circumstances. But it's what's forged in those times, and the quality that's forged is, again, through, you would hope, those sort of mushy things that you mentioned, you know? And I think that these characters being in such a horrible place, seeing such horrible things happen to other people and happen to them, and being able to survive that and get out of it, it only happens because of their friendship, and it only happens because of their relationship. I mentioned earlier that Brooks is maybe the analog to Andy. I'm gonna correct that. I think it's more of the analog to Red's character, because I think Red is maybe dealing with the institutionalization more than Andy is, who's trying to get out of there for 19 years, like you said, always sort of chipping away. So I don't know that that maybe was the best comparison I made earlier, but regardless, I think you really summarized it very, very well in terms of themes. The only other way to summarize it, I just got to get a number out of you, Neil. 1 out of 10 for the themes.
10 for the themes.
Easy peasy, no hesitation.
That's an easy one, yeah.
Well, that means we've got them all locked in, Neil. I'm going to run it back. You gave the plot a 10. You gave the characters and performances a 10. You gave the visual storytelling a 9, the use of sound an 8, and the themes a 10. That gives us a total of 94 out of 100. Pretty safe to say that's an A. Do you want to give it an A plus? Do you want to dock it? Maybe give it an A minus? I don't know. This is the power we give you, Neil.
I mean, it's very solidly an A grade, and yes, I would add the plus for this
A
movie.
plus, locked in. This is my answer to that, sir. I gave the plot a 10 to your 10. I gave the characters and performances a 10 to your 10. I gave the visual storytelling a 10 to your 9, but only because I'm afraid of Roger Deakins in the comment section. Use of sound, I actually gave it a 10. I I just maintain that sound is much like an edit. It's almost best when it's invisible. And I think sound is something that should be almost felt, not heard in a movie.
Hmm.
So, yeah, for me, I think Shawshank does everything it needs to do. I give it a 10 out of 10. For themes, I gave it a 9.5. The only reason I docked it a little bit is because I argue that for a movie to get a 10 out of 10 for theme, at least with me, it has to be an example. The movie itself, the piece of work itself, has to become an example of the theme. It can be very, very difficult for a film to achieve.
Mm.
So obviously, Shawshank isn't itself an example of institutionalization, as I don't think a film could be that, but it does explore it as well as any movie could. That means I gave it a 99 out of 100. So
Wow.
I indeed like this. But for about 20 years now, if you asked Al what are his top three favorite movies, Shawshank has always been one of the three. So yeah, I love this movie. I'm a big fan of Neil. Neil, if we ever bust out of this joint, I'm curious, will you meet up with me in Mexico? Maybe we can work on a boat together.
You bet. Yeah, I'm enjoying it here in the jungle. If for no other reason, it's better than the weather in Ireland, but it's also nice and green. You know, I live in the Emerald Isle, so I'm used to. It's got a bit of familiarity too. So we're already in a very nice spot here in your environment. But yeah, let's go to Mexico.
All right,
Why
let's do
not?
it. Well, Neil, thank you. Yeah, I am maybe what can I say? I'm a privileged lion. I'm here in this real digital jungle and I forget sometimes how great it is. But that's why I got great friends like you, Neil, to point it out. Uh, let's get out of here. Let's go to Mexico. How's that sound? Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Lila gave Lost in Translation an 86 and an A to my 90 and an A with an average of 88 and an A. Dan Stewart scored Dumb and Dumber an 89 and a B plus to my 90 and an A minus with an average of 89.5 and an A. And the Shawshank Redemption scored highest with a 94 and an A plus from Neil Flanagan and a 99 and another A plus from me with a 96.5 average. I would love to know what you scored each film, so let us know in the comments. I want to thank my pal Lila the Sugar Glider for gliding on in today. Check out vimeo.com/DPSJunior to see Dan's work and support Neil Flanagan by going to Post Wrestling's YouTube channel and hitting subscribe. Next time, we've got a very special edition of the show when 4 guests join me to discuss Spike Lee's early career. Jimmy the Toucan returns to chat She's Gotta Have It. Documentary producer Lara Benario and I review Do the Right Thing. And 2 very special guests help me grade Malcolm X. Thanks to the production team at Real Digital for producing this very episode, and Platinum Plastic, who sponsors all of our show's merchandise on redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, it's time to do just that. And you might as well subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops twice a week. Thanks for listening, and if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
Get busy living. You get busy dying.